Hey there, and welcome to Truth Talk Thursday. I'm your host, Jenny Kimmel, and today we're going to get real. The kind of real that stings before it soothes. Because this week's episode, The Hard Truth About Letting Go, is about the breaking point that comes before the strength. The quiet kind, the kind that no one sees when you finally realize that you can't fix it anymore. You can't fix the marriage, you can't fix the co-parenting, and you can't fix your kid's pain, and you can't fix him. That's what May was for me. The month I stopped pretending that love, patience, and understanding could heal someone who never wanted to be healed. It was the month I had to sit in the mess and whisper to myself, you don't have to fix this anymore. And that was both freeing and absolutely heartbreaking at the same time. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it really feels like to stop fixing everything and finally start healing yourself. When holding it all together starts to break you. There's a point where holding it together starts to break you. You don't see it coming. It doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, subtle, and quiet. It's the kind of breaking that happens in the middle of a normal Tuesday. When you're answering texts, making dinner, holding a conversation, smiling at your kids, and inside, something in you is quietly collapsing. That was me. All of May, I was functioning, working, parenting, showing up, but inside I was bone deep exhausted. Not just physically tired, but soul tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't touch. Because 4 months, honestly, for years, I'd been the one holding it all together. The family, the schedules, the emotions, the communication, the chaos. And when he walked away, I didn't stop. I just kept going because that's what moms do, right? We hold the line. But here's the truth that no one talks about. Holding everything together after someone blows up your life doesn't make you strong. It makes you numb. You learn to smile through the tears. You learn how to fake calm when your heart's screaming. You learn how to keep showing up when every part of you wants to run away. You learn how to live on autopilot because stopping means feeling everything you've been avoiding. And in May, that caught up with me. The divorce had dragged on. He backed out of our agreement. He was still spending our money like nothing mattered. And meanwhile, I was trying to keep my kids grounded, keep the bills paid, keep the house running, all while my own heart was still trying to recover from being shattered. I kept telling myself, you're fine, you're strong, you've got this. But inside, I didn't feel strong. I felt invisible, like I was doing everything for everyone and no one even noticed. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't holding it all together because I was strong. I was holding it all together because I was afraid of what would happen if I stopped. If I stopped trying to manage his moods, if I stopped trying to protect my kids from their dad's choices, if I stopped pretending that I was okay. Because what happens when the strong one finally admits she's not? Who catches her? I'd always been the fixer, the planner, the one who kept everyone else standing. And for so long, that gave me a sense of purpose. But in May, it didn't feel like purpose anymore. It felt like punishment. Because while he was out there building a new life, I was still holding the pieces of the old one, the pieces he dropped. And I was so tired, so unbelievably tired of pretending that I could carry it all. That month, I had to face a truth that gutted me. You can love your family, you can love your kids, you can even still love the person who hurt you. But you cannot keep holding the world together when you're falling apart inside. And sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is finally let something break. Because when it breaks, you can see it for what it is. When it breaks, you can finally stop carrying what was never yours to carry. And that's where I was in May, at the edge of my breaking point, realizing that maybe the breaking wasn't a failure at all. Maybe it was my freedom trying to get out. The guilt of letting go. When I finally started to let go of fixing, of explaining, of protecting, I thought I'd feel free. But the truth, at first, I just felt guilty. It wasn't this big, obvious guilt. It was quiet and lingering. It sat in my chest and whispered things like, you should have tried harder. You should have said more. You're supposed to keep the family together. It's the kind of guilt that only mothers can understand. The kind that makes you question if you're doing enough, even when you're doing everything. I've been conditioned for so long to believe that being a good mom meant holding everyone together, that being a good wife meant sacrificing my own needs, and that being a good person meant making things easier for everyone else. So when I finally started to step back, when I stopped softening his choices for the boys, when I stopped trying to fix what he broke, I felt like I was failing. Because I'd been doing it so long that not doing it felt wrong. I can still remember one night sitting at my kitchen table after another tense conversation about the kids, and I had that familiar knot in my stomach, the one that always came when I knew he'd say something dismissive or twist my words into something ugly. I was so tired of explaining, tired of being misunderstood, and tired of caring more than he did. And I remember saying, almost in a whisper, I can't keep doing this anymore. I can't keep fixing this. Whatever happens between you and the boys, that's up to you now. And the silence that followed, it was deafening. It wasn't peace yet. It was just quiet. The kind of quiet that's heavy because it's filled with everything you've been holding in. When I hung up the phone, I just sat there staring at nothing. I wasn't angry. I wasn't crying. I was just empty. And then came the guilt, because part of me thought, what if the boys end up hurt because of this? What if stepping back makes things worse? What if they need me to keep smoothing things over? And that's the hardest part of letting go, the not knowing. Not knowing how it will all play out, not knowing if they'll understand, and not knowing if you're doing the right thing when your heart is screaming to protect them. People had been saying things like, you can't protect them from him. They need to see it for themselves. And I knew they were right, but knowing and accepting are two different things, because a mother's instinct is to soften the blow, to shield her kids from the storm, even if it means standing in the rain alone. But I couldn't keep doing that anymore. I couldn't keep defending someone who had stopped defending us a long time ago. And I couldn't keep painting over cracks that he kept creating. So little by little, I stopped. When the boys came to me hurt or angry about something their dad said or did, I didn't jump to defend him anymore. I didn't say, he still loves you, he's your dad. I didn't say he's trying his best, because deep down I knew he wasn't. Instead, I started saying things like, I know that hurt. I understand why you feel that way, and I'm here for you whenever you need me. It sounds simple, but those 3 words, I am here, carried more truth than anything else I'd said in months, because for the first time, I wasn't protecting him. I was protecting them by finally letting them feel what they needed to feel. And the guilt didn't disappear overnight. There were days I'd question myself thinking, should I have said more? Should I have stepped in? But then I'd see something shift in the boys. A small spark of strength, a new awareness, a moment where they spoke their own truth, and I'd realize I was doing the right thing. Letting go wasn't just freeing me, it was freeing them. They didn't need me to fix everything. They needed to know it was okay to be honest with their pain. They needed to see that love doesn't mean silence, and I needed to see that too, because for years I confused silence with peace. But peace doesn't come from pretending. Peace comes from truth, even when the truth hurts. Letting go of fixing everything meant facing the fact that I couldn't stop their heartbreak and I couldn't undo his choices. And that realization hurt in a way I can't even put into words. Because as a mom, you want to be the buffer, the soft place to land. But I learned that sometimes love means stepping back and letting them stand on their own. I think the guilt stayed with me as long as it did because I loved so deeply. That's what no one tells you. Guilt is often just love that doesn't know where to go. It's the ache of still wanting to fix things that you can't control. But over time, the guilt started to shift into something softer, something like acceptance. Because even though I couldn't fix it, I could still be there. And sometimes that's all that really matters. Letting go didn't mean I stopped caring. It just meant I finally started caring for myself too. And that's something I hadn't done in a very long time. Watching the kids see it for themselves. There are few things in life more brutal than watching your children's innocence crack. You hear people talk about heartbreak all the time, but no one prepares you for this kind of heartbreak, the one you feel twice. Once through their eyes and again through your own. When the boys first started piecing things together, it was subtle. It wasn't one big explosion. It was a series of quiet realizations. A shift in their tone when they talked about their dad, a certain look in their eyes when his name came up, the silence that filled the room after they'd been at his house. They were starting to see him for who he'd become, and I could see the confusion written all over their faces. I remember one night, one of them came home and sat at the kitchen table, shoulders slumped, eyes glassy. He didn't have to say a word. I knew. I knew he'd seen something, heard something, or felt something that changed the way he looked at his dad. And I just quietly sat down next to him because I didn't have the right words. There are no right words for that kind of pain. He finally said, "Mom, it's just weird over there now." And I could tell that weird was just his word for hurt. That's when the ache hit, deep, low, and relentless, because I had spent months trying to protect them from exactly this, trying to keep the image of their dad intact, trying to make sure they didn't carry the same heaviness I did, and now, watching them start to see the cracks, it broke something inside me. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to scoop up all their pain and carry it for them just like I had carried mine, but I couldn't. This was their heartbreak to feel, their lesson to learn, and their realization to process. And that's where the helplessness comes in. Because as a mom, you're built to protect. It's instinct, it's in your bones. You'd walk through fire if it meant they never had to. But this was a fire they had to feel to understand, and I hated that. Some nights they'd talk about him, the broken promises, the things he said that didn't make sense, the way he seemed distracted when they were with him. And I'd just listen. I'd nod, I'd hold space, and sometimes I'd cry after they went to bed at night because I couldn't believe we'd gotten here. And then there were other nights when they didn't talk at all. When I'd hear them laughing in their rooms for a brief moment, I'd feel that mix of relief and grief. Relief that they could still find joy, grief that it now existed separate from him. What I learned through all of this is that there's a special kind of pain that comes with watching your kids lose faith in someone they once loved. Because you remember what that faith used to feel like. You remember how small they were when they'd run to the door to greet him, eyes full of trust. And now that same door opens to something unfamiliar, to someone unfamiliar. And you can't stop it. You can't change it. You can only watch. I would lie awake some nights wondering if I did the right thing by letting them see it for themselves. Would they grow resentful? Would it harden them? Would they still find softness in the world after all of this? And every time that same quiet voice inside me would whisper, they need to know what truth feels like, even when it hurts. Because that's how healing starts. Not with pretending things are fine, but with facing what's real. I think what hurt most was knowing that he didn't even realize what he was doing to them. He didn't see their eyes dimming. He didn't notice their laughter changing. He didn't hear the silence they carried after every visit. So I became their safe place. Not the fixer anymore, just the safe place, the one they could come home to, no explanations needed, the one who wouldn't defend him, but who also wouldn't feed the anger, the one who just held them in their confusion, in their hurt, and in their processing. And over time, I started to realize that maybe this was the most honest kind of parenting there is. Not protecting them from pain, but guiding them through it. Showing them that love can disappoint you, but that doesn't mean you stop believing in love. That people can fail you, but that doesn't mean you stop showing up for yourself. And still, it hurt like hell. Every look in their eyes that said, I get it now. Every quiet car ride home, every moment I wanted to scream, he should have done better by you. But I knew that wouldn't fix a thing. There's this moment when you realize your kids are growing up, not just in years, but in understanding. And it's beautiful and devastating all at once. Because it means you did something right, you raised them to see truth, but it also means they'll never see things the same way again. And that's the hardest part of it all, because when your kids finally see the truth for themselves, there's no going back. And as a mom, you have to learn to live in that space, the one between heartbreak and healing, where you can't shield them anymore, but you can still love them through it. That's what May was for me, standing in that space, watching the truth unfold, and realizing that maybe, just maybe, letting them see it was the most loving thing I could have ever done. The freedom and stopping the fix. There comes a point when you get tired of trying to fix something that someone else keeps breaking. Not angry tired, just soul tired. That quiet kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much, but from caring too long. That's where I was in May. For months, I'd been carrying everything, the communication, the emotions, the scheduling, the apologies, the in-between moments no one else wanted to deal with. And for years before that, I had carried that same invisible weight, the emotional labor of keeping the peace, making things easier for him, and soothing over what wasn't working. I had always believed that if I could just stay calm enough, if I could just love enough, if I could just explain enough, maybe he would see it. Maybe he would care. Maybe he would finally show up. But you can't fix a person who doesn't think they're broken. You can't build peace with someone who thrives in conflict. And you can't keep giving grace to someone who keeps turning it into permission. By May, I was done trying. It wasn't an angry done. It was a sad, tired, I can't keep doing this to myself anymore kind of done. The kind where your voice shakes the first time you say it, but your soul knows the truth. I remember the exact moment I said it to him. I can't keep fixing this for you. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't emotional. It was calm, almost too calm, like my spirit had already decided. Because for once, I wasn't trying to prove a point or win an argument. I was just done explaining myself to someone who had already stopped listening. And when those words left my mouth, something inside me cracked, but not in a bad way. It felt like a release, like exhaling after holding your breath for years. I hung up the phone, and for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to text back, to fix, to rephrase, or to soften what I had said. I just sat there in the quiet and let it be. That quiet felt strange at first, almost unbearable, because when you've spent years trying to fix things, chaos becomes your comfort. You get used to the constant back and forth, the emotional tug of war, the noise of it all. So when the noise finally stops, it's not peace you feel at first, it's emptiness. But that emptiness, That's where the healing begins, because in that silence, I started to hear myself again. My own thoughts, my own voice, my own truth that had been drowned out for so long by the noise of trying to fix something unfixable. I realized that I had been holding onto this false sense of control, this belief that if I just worked harder, communicated better, stayed calmer, I could somehow change the outcome. But you can't fix someone who doesn't want to grow. You can't force a person to meet you halfway when they never intended to walk towards you. The only person I had any control over was me. And for so long, I had ignored that. I had poured so much energy into saving someone else that I didn't even realize I needed saving too. When I stopped trying to fix him, I started fixing me. Not in a big dramatic way, but in the small, quiet moments. By taking walks alone and not feeling lonely. By writing in my journal without filtering my words. By learning that silence doesn't always mean sadness, sometimes it means strength. And the more I released the need to fix, the more peace started to find me. Not because he changed, because he didn't, but because I did. I stopped letting every text from him ruin my mood. I stopped replaying every conversation in my head, wondering if I could have said something differently. I stopped trying to earn peace from someone who didn't have any to give. And that was hard. Gosh, it was so hard because fixing things was who I had always been. Letting go felt like losing a piece of my identity. But maybe that's exactly what needed to happen. Maybe I had to lose the fixer to find the free woman underneath. There was one night that stands out. The boys were asleep, the house was quiet, and I was sitting alone with a candle burning on my nightstand. And I wrote in my journal, maybe healing isn't about putting everything back together. Maybe it's about finally setting down what was never mine to carry. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry when I wrote it. I felt calm and still, like something inside me had shifted. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't resentful. I wasn't waiting for him to do better because I finally understood that his growth wasn't my responsibility. His behavior wasn't my burden, and that his choices no longer defined my peace. There's a certain freedom in that. The freedom that comes when you stop expecting closure from the person who broke you. When you stop hoping they'll change and instead you change your relationship with what hurt you. When you stop saying, why would he do this? And start saying, I deserve better. That's where I was at the end of May. Still hurting, still healing, but lighter, more honest, more at peace with what was and what would never be. Because when you stop fixing someone else's mess, you finally have the energy to rebuild your own peace. And that's the kind of healing that sticks. The lesson in letting go. Letting go isn't this one-time dramatic decision. It's not a single day where you wake up and suddenly feel free. It's a process, one you live through over and over again until it finally starts to feel like peace instead of punishment. And for me, May was that turning point. It was the month I realized that letting go doesn't mean you stop loving someone. It means you stop needing their love to survive. I had held on for so long, not just to him, but to that version of me that believed love could fix everything. That if I was patient enough, forgiving enough, understanding enough, he'd finally see what he was losing. But what I learned was that love alone isn't enough. Not when it's one-sided. Not when it costs you your peace. Not when it keeps you small. Letting go meant finally telling myself the truth, that I had been fighting for something that only existed in my memories. The man I loved wasn't the man standing in front of me anymore, and maybe he never really was. Maybe I had been loving the idea of him, the potential, the promise, and the hope that he would grow. But love rooted in potential isn't love. It's attachment. It's fear. It's the desperate hope that if you give enough, they'll give it back. But they don't. And I had to stop waiting for that. There's a kind of grief that comes with accepting that someone you built your life with is no longer who you thought they were. It's not just losing them, it's losing the future you planned, the home you built, and the version of yourself that existed in that life. You lose your routines, your security, and your identity. You lose the person you were when you still believed forever was real. And even months later, I was still grieving that version of me. The one who thought she could hold a family together with sheer willpower. The one who believed she was enough to make him stay. The one who apologized for things she didn't do just to avoid more pain. Letting go meant saying goodbye to her too. But somewhere in that goodbye, I started meeting someone new, a version of me who didn't need to beg for peace because she was building it herself. A version of me who didn't need permission to feel happy. A version of me who didn't apologize for wanting more. And she was strong, not because she never cried, but because she finally allowed herself to. Because she stopped pretending that strength meant silence. She stopped pretending that being okay all the time made her brave. Sometimes strength looks like falling apart and trusting that you'll rebuild differently this time. It looks like saying, I miss you, and knowing you'll still be okay without them. It looks like forgiving, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Because you're tired of carrying the anger that keeps you tied to the past. That's what letting go taught me. That peace isn't something someone gives you. It's something you create in the wreckage of what they left behind. And slowly, I started noticing the little moments that reminded me I was healing. Moments that I used to overlook, like driving alone and realizing I wasn't crying anymore. Like going through a whole day without checking my phone and wondering if he had texted. Like waking up one morning and realizing that my first thought wasn't about him. It was about me. That's the quiet part of healing that no one talks about, the small victories, the moments when you catch yourself laughing and it doesn't feel forced. When you look around your home and realize that the air feels lighter now. When you listen to music that used to hurt and instead of crying, you just breathe. That's what healing really is, learning to live again without the ache taking center stage. Learning to love yourself the way you kept trying to love someone else. And I won't pretend it's easy. There are still moments that sting, songs that bring back memories, places that make my chest tighten, old habits that creep back in. But now, those moments don't define me. They remind me of how far I've come because healing isn't about easing the past, it's about carrying it differently. It's about saying, yes, that hurt, but it also taught me who I am, and I'm not ashamed of that anymore. May taught me that sometimes the lesson isn't the staying or the fixing, it's the walking away. It's the moment you realize that loving yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. It's in the way you stop trying to prove your worth to someone who was never capable of seeing it. And it's in the way you finally let peace take up the space chaos used to live in. So if I learned anything through it all, it's this. Letting go isn't losing, it's coming home. Back to yourself, back to your truth, back to the quiet, steady love that was waiting inside you all along. And maybe that's what healing really is. Remembering who you were before someone taught you to question your own worth. You know, if there's one thing that this season of my life has taught me, it's that peace doesn't come wrapped up in some perfect ending. It doesn't show up the day the papers are signed or the tears finally stop. Peace shows up when you stop fighting for what keeps breaking you and you start fighting for you. Letting go has been one of the hardest, most painful lessons of my life, but it has also been the most freeing. Because every time I thought I couldn't survive one more heartbreak, I did. Every time I thought I couldn't get back up, I found a little more strength buried somewhere inside me. And every time I thought I was breaking beyond repair, I realized I was just breaking open, making space for something new. So if you're listening right now and you're still holding on to the pain, to the what ifs, to the version of someone who no longer exists, I get it. I've been there too. But please hear me when I say this. You don't have to fix it anymore. You are allowed to let it fall apart so you can finally rebuild it into something that feels like peace. And maybe that's the whole point of this journey, to stop trying to rewrite someone else's story and start writing your own again. To take back your energy, your time, your worth, and pour it into you. Take a moment after this episode, just one quiet moment, to ask yourself, what am I still trying to fix that isn't mine to fix anymore? Write it down, say it out loud, and then little by little start to release it. Because the freedom that follows, it's everything. If today's Truth Talk Thursday resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with another mom, another woman, or another soul who might need to hear that she's not alone. Subscribe and follow along on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Mama Drama and Trauma, and let's keep growing through the hard stuff together. As always, you are strong, you are worthy, and your story matters. Until next time, take care of you.